Have you ever tried writing an email to your future self? Or maybe you dug up a calendar event you set like a year ago, or read an old journal entry from a decade past.
Oh, yeah. It's a weird feeling.
Right. It feels like you're looking at the actions of a complete stranger. It's this bizarre sensation where, for a fact it was you, but the person who wrote those words feels, entirely disconnected from the person reading them today.
It really creates a profound sort of cognitive dissonance because we just navigate the world assuming we're a single continuous entity.
Yeah, of course.
But time practically dissolves that continuity. From a neurological and, well, psychological standpoint, the person you were 10 years ago is running a fundamentally different operating system than the one you're running today.
Which is wild to think about. And yet, despite that absolute strangeness, we do things for that future stranger all the time.
We do, constantly.
Which brings us to today's topic. Because the future does not yet exist, so why are humans willing to sacrifice for it? That is the central, beautifully simple mystery we are tackling in today's deep dive.
It really is a fascinating question.
We are pulling from this really incredible stack of translated philosophical notes and cognitive science papers. They cover a framework called reflective humanism and this concept of temporal identity. So our mission today is to unpack the architecture of our temporal identity. We want to figure out why we lose connection with our future selves and why maintaining that connection might actually be the very thing that sustains human civilization.
And this specific collection of sources, it is incredibly ambitious.
Oh, totally.
It bridges cognitive science, philosophy, system design, but at its core, it asks us to look at the incredibly mundane things you do every single day.
Right.
Think about the baseline behaviors of long-term thinking. Studying for a final exam, putting a percentage of your paycheck into a savings account, dragging yourself to the gym to maintain your physical health.
Ugh, the gym.
Yes. Right, planting a tree, or even raising children.
So we perform those actions constantly. We are
Yeah.
basically acting toward unseen outcomes on a daily basis.
We are. Now, the conventional wisdom you usually hear is that we do this because humans are uniquely gifted at predicting the future.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, we calculate the odds, we chart the trajectory, and we place a rational bet. But the fascinating turn in these papers is that they explicitly reject that premise.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they argue these actions are not driven by our ability to accurately predict the future because, as the author points out, human prediction is actually quite brittle. The future almost never arrives looking exactly how we imagined it would.
Okay, wait, I have to push back on that right out of the gate. Prediction is the entire basis of economics, science, planning. Like, if I don't try to predict the stock market or inflation rates, my retirement account just goes to zero.
Right.
How could these papers argue that prediction doesn't matter?
Well, they aren't saying you shouldn't try to forecast practical things. They're saying prediction isn't the actual engine that sustains the behavior.
Right.
Think about it. If your long-term actions were solely based on predicting an outcome the moment your prediction was wrong, say the stock market crashes, you would abandon the concept of saving altogether.
Oh, I see. You just give up.
Exactly. But you don't. You adjust. You try a different strategy. And why? The text argues it's because you are quietly maintaining a connection with a version of yourself that hasn't been born yet.
Huh.
It's less about knowing what the future holds and much more about preserving an empathetic relationship with whoever you will be when that future arrives.
Wow. It's like passing a baton in a relay race, but you're passing it to a ghost.
That is a great way to put it.
Like, you don't know exactly what that runner looks like. You don't know their running style or what the track conditions will be, but you hold your hand out anyway because you trust they'll be there to take it. Okay, let's unpack the mechanics of this. How does our brain actually pull that off? Like, how does our cognitive structure support this feeling of being the same person across these vast, unpredictable changes?
So to understand the mechanics, we have to look at this foundational concept the author introduces. It's called the interference field.
The interference field. Okay, that sounds like a sci-fi force field. What are we actually talking about here?
It does sound sci-fi, but imagine dropping two pebbles into a perfectly still pond just a few feet apart.
Okay.
They both create ripples, right? And where those ripples meet, overlap, and crash into each other, that is an interference pattern.
Right, physics.
Yeah. And the author argues that human consciousness and meaning are generated in the exact same way. We don't have this static, fixed identity. Instead, our brain takes past memories. So one set of ripples and present inputs, the second set of ripples, and where they crash into each other, new meaning is generated. We are constantly in a state of generation.
So we aren't a fixed sculpture. We are the water constantly reacting to the pebbles.
Yes. And the text describes this ongoing generation as a spiral.
A spiral.
Right. We don't move in a circle, which just repeats the same mistakes endlessly. And we don't move in a straight line, which implies unbroken, predictable progress. We spiral.
We loop around.
Exactly. We revisit the same themes, the same challenges, and the same relationships over time, but ideally from a slightly higher vantage point with each loop. Staying connected to your future self means maintaining this iterative, spiraling process.
I think I need a more mechanical metaphor for the spiral, because I know plenty of people, myself included on certain days, who feel incredibly stuck on a fixed point, like not spiraling anywhere at all.
Sure. Think of it like how a complex software system gets updated. It doesn't just invent an entirely new program every day, it iterates.
Okay.
You have version 1.0, which encounters bugs in the real world, so the developers loop back, patch the vulnerabilities, and release version 1.1.
Same core architecture, but better.
Exactly. It's the same core architecture, revisiting the same functions, but moving forward with greater capability. When we get stuck on a fixed point, it's because we are refusing the update.
Oh, wow. And how do we ensure we keep taking the update?
By fundamentally shifting how we process our reality. The source suggests that this continuous generation, the spiral, is driven by holding on to a question rather than a fixed conclusion.
Wait, say more about that.
When you judge the world with absolute binary evaluations claiming something is permanently fixed or purely good or purely bad, the generation field basically freezes. The ripples stop.
Because if you have the absolute final answer, there is no more interference. There's nowhere left to go. The baton has just been dropped.
Right. But a genuine, open question keeps the cognitive field active. The text explains that holding a question creates a gentle gradient.
A gentle gradient. Walk me through the actual psychological mechanism there. How does a question create a slope?
Let's use a real-world scenario. Imagine your fixed conclusion is, I am a graphic designer at this specific agency, and this is who I will be forever. Okay.
If you get laid off, that fixed point shatters. The gap between your rigid belief and your new reality is massive, and it forces a sudden, brutal update to your worldview.
Yeah, that's devastating.
The text literally describes this as a collision that returns to the human body as heat and pain. It calls this discontinuous generation.
Then that makes total sense. The layoff feels like hitting a brick wall at 60 miles an hour because you just assumed the road was totally straight.
Exactly.
Or wait, let me rephrase that. It's more like if you were operating from a question instead, the impact changes entirely.
That is the crucial difference. If your internal operating state is a question such as, how can I use visual communication to solve interesting problems? A layoff is still really difficult, but it doesn't shatter your identity.
Because you're still asking the question.
Exactly. It simply acts as new data sliding down that gentle gradient you created. The question acts as a shock absorber. It's described in the papers as a pain minimization device for generating meaning, allowing us to adapt without violently colliding with reality. So the question keeps our worldview flexible. But let me stop you there, because here is where the philosophy crashes into modern reality for me.
Okay, lay on me.
If this spiral of connection is so natural to us, and if asking questions is our built-in shock absorber, why does making long-term choices feel so exhausting lately? Like, look around. It doesn't feel like society is gently spiraling into the future. It feels like we are violently colliding with the present every 5 seconds. Our spiral's getting flattened.
You've hit on the exact friction the author addresses in the second half of the material. We are currently experiencing an intense civilization-wide phenomenon that the text calls synchronization pressure to the present.
Synchronization pressure. That sounds heavy.
It functions exactly like a physical weight on our cognition. We are relentlessly bombarded with today's evaluations.
Like the news cycle.
Today's quarterly profit margins, today's online outrage cycle, breaking news alerts, an endless stream of instant notifications. Modern society demands that we synchronize our attention entirely with the now.
Okay, picture this scenario. I'm sitting at my desk, trying to log into my retirement portal to adjust my 401k contributions for the year 2050.
Okay.
But while I'm typing my password, my phone buzzes with a notification about a bank failing, then a news alert about a political scandal, then an urgent email from my boss about a deadline in 10 minutes. Like, My brain is oscillating wildly between decades from now and 10 seconds from now.
And that oscillation comes with a massive cognitive cost. The reflective humanism framework talks about the necessity of spare capacity.
Shared capacity.
Yeah, think of it as an internal buffer, a mental empty space. This spare capacity is what allows the interference field to function. It allows you to process information deeply and generate new meaning. It is the breathing room the spiral requires to loop forward.
Okay, so if my brain's RAM is completely maxed out processing that bank failure alert and the angry email from my boss, I have literally zero spare capacity left to load the software of my 2050 future self. The system just crashes.
The contact surface that extends to the future is effectively severed. Your 6-month future self or your 10-year future self becomes a stranger because you haven't had the bandwidth to maintain a dialogue with them. You forget the relay race is even happening.
Wow.
And the source gives a very striking name to the feeling this creates. It calls the friction between our natural, spiraling existence and this forced, present-focused linear processing transparent pain.
Transparent pain. Like a phantom limb, but for time.
Yes, exactly.
A headache you can't quite locate,
Right.
or a sense of deep exhaustion that doesn't make sense because you've just been sitting in a comfortable chair looking at a screen all day.
It's the invisible friction of your internal operating system clashing with the speed of the external world. It is the pain of a severed temporal connection. When we're forced to live reaction to reaction, we lose the graceful arc of the spiral. We lose the gradient.
So we're essentially walking around with our temporal limbs chopped off, wondering why it hurts to try and plan for a career change or retirement. I mean, that is a pretty intense diagnosis. But the sources don't just leave it at the micro level of an individual checking their smartphone, do they? They scale this up.
They scale it up dramatically because if individuals are losing the capacity to connect with their future selves due to the synchronization pressure, what happens to a civilization that relies on that exact same cognitive architecture to survive?
Right, because a society isn't some abstract entity. It's just a massive collection of these individual cognitive operating systems trying to network together.
And the sustainability of human civilization depends entirely on this shared structure of future continuity. Let's look at the macro level. Think about massive infrastructure investments,
Right.
like building a subway system that takes 25 years to tunnel through bedrock. Think about funding foundational scientific research, like a particle accelerator, that might not yield practical technology for half a century.
Or even environmental stewardship.
Yes. Or the basic concept of a public education system.
None of those projects offer instant gratification. They completely defy the synchronization pressure to the present, because the people funding them often won't live to see the results.
And the crucial insight from the text is that these civilizational projects are not expressions of successful future prediction, just like the individual saving for retirement.
Oh, bringing it back to prediction.
Right. We don't bore tunnels through a mountain because we have perfectly predicted the state of urban transit 50 years from now. We do it as an expression of a quiet, continuous connection with future generations.
It's the baton pass again, but on a species-wide level. We don't know who the future citizens riding that subway will be, what their exact daily struggles will look like, or even what slang they'll be speaking.
But we build the tunnel anyway. The text introduces a concept here called reconnectability. It argues that preserving an open, flexible relationship with the future is vastly more important than guaranteeing a specific outcome.
Because if a society focuses only on guaranteeing a rigid outcome, it falls back into that brittle prediction.
Exactly. And when the prediction inevitably fails, the project collapses. But if the focus is on reconnectability, we build systems that are adaptable and open to the evolving reality of those future generations.
So we are essentially building a massive bridge in the fog. We don't know exactly where the other side lands. We can't see the opposite shore, but we are trusting that someone will be there to cross it. And the act of building the bridge is what actually matters.
Beautifully said. And the mechanism that drives this bridge building, according to the reflective humanism framework, is framed as a form of deep gratitude.
Wait, gratitude? That usually means saying thank you for a gift you already received in the past. How does that connect to building a bridge for someone in the future?
It's a very specific structural definition of gratitude. In this philosophy, it's not just an emotional response to a gift, it is an ethical vector.
An ethical factor.
It is a quiet assent, an acknowledgement that a connection has occurred between you and the continuum of time.
Whoa, ethical vector. That sounds like something straight out of an advanced physics textbook, Let's translate that for a second. Are we saying it's less about feeling warm and fuzzy and more about giving our brain and our behavior a literal direction to point in?
That is a brilliant way to put it. It provides direction. When you plant a tree, the structural gratitude isn't for the shade you will personally receive. The gratitude is the force that gives you the capacity to care about the shade someone else will receive.
Oh, wow.
It is the energy that sustains the spiral over centuries. When a civilization operates with that kind of vector, it protects its internal spare capacity. It doesn't consume every single resource for today's profit margin. It leaves buffer room in the environment, in the economy, and in the culture.
Because that empty space is what allows the future to exist.
Exactly.
But when that synchronization pressure takes over, when the outrage cycle demands all our attention, we consume that spare capacity. We eat the seed corn.
And the transparent pain we feel as individuals, that exhaustion, that alienation from our own future, is simply a micro expression of a civilization severing its own temporal continuity. We stop building the bridge in the fog because we demand to see the other side right now with perfect clarity before we lay a single brick.
Which is impossible. The future is unwritten. If we demand proof of it before we act, we will just stand paralyzed on the edge of the fog forever.
Paralysis is the opposite of life. Life, as described in these cognitive notes, is a biological act of perception that constantly touches the world and transforms fluctuations into meaning. It requires movement.
This is incredibly heavy, but I also find it weirdly liberating. Because it means the burden isn't on us to perfectly predict what's going to happen to our careers in 10 years, or what the global economy will do next month. That's a huge relief, honestly.
The directive from the source text is actually very gentle. It suggests we avoid forcing hard conclusions about who we will be. Instead, it introduces a daily practice it calls health scan mode.
Health scan mode. Okay, translation time again.
Yeah.
We aren't talking about running an antivirus check on a laptop, are we?
We are talking about checking your cognitive homeostasis. It's an attitude of reflection where you quietly observe the state of your system without immediately trying to change it.
Okay.
You look at your thoughts, your anxieties, your rigid beliefs, not to violently fix them in a panic, but just to acknowledge them.
So not deleting a virus, just checking the temperature, just watching the system run so you can see where the friction is, and actively preserving that spare capacity we talked about.
By doing that, you protect your invisible contact surface from the deafening noise of the present. If you can maintain that gentle gradient, if you can hold on to the question instead of grasping for the absolute conclusion, you keep the spiral moving, you keep the pain minimized, and you keep your hand extended with the baton, even in the fog.
It really reshapes how you look at a simple calendar reminder or a savings account, doesn't it? It's not just a digital nudge. It's a tiny thread connecting you to a ghost you are slowly turning into. Every time you make a choice that sacrifices a tiny bit of today's comfort for tomorrow's well-being, you are performing a profound ethical act. You are defying the synchronization pressure.
You are insisting that the future matters. It challenges us to look at our daily friction, that transparent pain, not just as modern stress, but as an alarm bell. A signal that we need to reclaim our spare capacity and reopen the dialogue with time.
We've covered a massive amount of ground today, from the cognitive RAM of checking a smartphone to the civilizational necessity of building bridges in the fog. But as we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with something to mull over.
It's an important question to ask.
If human civilization relies entirely on this organic, sometimes painful but beautiful biological connection to our future selves, what happens when we start handing those long-term decisions over to artificial intelligence? A system that might be able to predict outcomes perfectly, but has absolutely no biological capacity to experience the future it is building. Can a machine actually hold a baton, or is it just calculating the wind speed? So think about that the next time an algorithm nudges your choices. Are we making decisions only for who we are today, or are we quietly maintaining a relationship with someone we have not yet become?